In the larger-than-life world of professional wrestling, where myth and reality intertwine like sweaty combatants, one family name stands above all others: Von Erich. Their saga is a tapestry woven with threads of unparalleled success and unfathomable tragedy. It's a tale that begins with a father's dream, blossoms into a dynasty, and ends in a cascade of heartbreak that would leave even the most hardened wrestling fan shaken. This is the story of the Von Erichs, a family that climbed to the pinnacle of wrestling stardom, only to plummet into an abyss of sorrow that would challenge the very notion of the American dream. Our story begins in the dust and heat of Texas, with a man named Jack Adkisson. Born in 1929 in the small town of Jewett, Jack's childhood was shaped by his father, the town sheriff, who believed that toughness was next to godliness. Young Jack was thrust into impromptu boxing matches with other local boys, a crucible designed to forge strength from innocence. This early baptism in violence would set the stage for a life where physical prowess and pain would become inextricably linked. Jack's natural athleticism blossomed in high school, where he excelled in football and discus throwing. His talents earned him a coveted scholarship to Southern Methodist University, but it was here that Jack would make a decision that would alter the course of his life. He fell in love with his high school sweetheart, Doris, and in a move that prioritized matters of the heart over athletic ambition, they married in 1950. Jack was just 20, Doris a mere 17, a union born of passion that would bear both sweet fruit and bitter harvest in the years to come. The price of love was steep. Jack's marriage cost him his scholarship, but adversity seemed to fuel his determination. He transferred to another college, had a brief flirtation with professional football, but the big break he sought remained elusive. It was a failed tryout for the Canadian Football League that would, ironically, set Jack on the path to his true destiny. In Edmonton, he crossed paths with Stu Hart, a name that would become synonymous with wrestling royalty. Under Hart's tutelage, Jack Adkisson began his metamorphosis into the man who would become known, feared, and eventually revered as Fritz von Erich. Returning to Texas, Jack stepped into the ring at Dallas's Sportatorium, but he was no longer the all-American boy next door. He had become Fritz von Erich, a villainous Nazi character that tapped into the still raw wounds of the post-war era. It was a gimmick designed to provoke visceral hatred from the crowds, and it succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Fritz quickly established himself as one of wrestling's premier heels, a man audiences loved to hate. His signature move, the Iron Claw, became the stuff of wrestling legend. With one massive hand, he would engulf his opponent's face, squeezing their temples in a grip that looked capable of crushing skulls. Little did Fritz know that this fearsome hold would become both the symbol of his family's domination and a metaphor for the vice-like grip of fate that would eventually squeeze the life out of his dreams. As Fritz's notoriety in the ring grew, so did his family outside it. He and Doris welcomed their first son, Jack Jr., in September 1952. Kevin followed in May 1957, and David in July 1958. The Von Erichs seemed to be living a charmed life, a successful career, a growing brood of healthy boys, and a future as bright as the Texas sun. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. In 1959, while Fritz was away wrestling, tragedy struck with the sudden brutal efficiency of a body slam. 6-year-old Jack Jr., playing innocently in the trailer park where the family was staying in Niagara Falls, Ontario, touched an exposed electrical wire. The shock rendered him unconscious, and in a cruel twist of fate, he fell face first into a puddle of melting snow, where he drowned before help could arrive. The loss of their firstborn son shattered Fritz and Doris. It was a wound that would never fully heal, a phantom limb that would ache for decades to come. For Fritz, grief mutated into a ferocious determination. He vowed that his remaining sons, and those yet to be born, would be forged into indestructible athletes. In his mind, physical perfection became a shield against the cruelties of an indifferent universe. Fritz purchased 115 acres of Texas land, a kingdom where he could mold his progeny away from the corrupting influences of the outside world. Carrie was born in February 1960, followed by Mike in March 1964, and finally, Chris in September 1969. On this sprawling ranch, Fritz began to implement his vision, constructing a homemade wrestling ring behind their house and setting up a home gym that would have put many professional facilities to shame. The Von Erich boys were raised in an environment where physical toughness and athletic excellence were not just encouraged, but expected. They learned to hunt, ride motorcycles, and most crucially, to fight. Fritz's parenting style was a complex amalgam of love and iron-fisted discipline, nurturing one moment and harshly punitive the next. The boys were taught to stand up to bullies and never back down from a challenge, lessons that would serve them well in the ring, but perhaps leave them ill-equipped for life's more nuanced battles. As the boys grew, they blossomed into extraordinary athletes. Kevin, David, and Kerry became high school sports legends, excelling in football, basketball, and track and field. Kerry's prowess in discus throwing even saw him set a world junior record. It seemed Fritz's dream of raising a brood of indomitable athletes was coming to fruition, but the wrestling ring exerted an inexorable pull on the Von Erich boys. One by one, they abandoned promising college careers to follow in their father's footsteps. The decision was less a choice than an inevitability, as if their fates had been etched into their DNA alongside their father's powerful build and charismatic presence. Kevin would later reflect on this momentous turning point, saying, "We didn't even know if we'd like wrestling that much. I mean, wrestling was filled with these old, out-of-shape men, going from one small town to another, looking miserable. But we all knew what was going to happen in the end. It was inevitable. We were going to go into wrestling because we wanted to be just like our dad." As the 1970s gave way to the 1980s, Fritz von Erich underwent a transformation as dramatic as any storyline he had ever performed in the ring. The villainous heel became a masterful promoter, rebranding his promotion as World Class Championship Wrestling. In a stroke of marketing genius, he positioned his sons as its undisputed stars, crafting an image of all-American heroism that stood in stark contrast to his former Nazi persona. The gambit paid off beyond Fritz's wildest dreams. World Class Championship Wrestling became a cultural phenomenon, its reach extending far beyond Texas. The promotion's shows aired across the United States and even found audiences internationally. The Von Erich brothers, particularly Kevin, David, and Kerry, weren't just wrestlers anymore. They had become bona fide superstars, their appeal transcending the traditional boundaries of their sport. Each Von Erich brother brought something unique to the squared circle. Kevin, known for his agility and innovative moves, often wrestled barefoot, adding to his everyman appeal. David, dubbed the Yellow Rose of Texas, was considered the most technically skilled, a wrestler's wrestler. Kerry, with his Adonis-like physique, embodied the physical ideal, a living, breathing superhero straight out of the pages of a comic book. The Von Erichs weren't just athletes, they were cultural icons. Women swooned over their chiseled good looks, men admired their strength and skill, and children idolized them as real-life superheroes. They graced television shows, spoke at churches, and drew crowds wherever they went. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed the Von Erichs were untouchable, their star ascending ever higher in the firmament of wrestling greatness. But beneath the glitz and glamour, cracks were beginning to show in the Von Erich facade. The pressure to maintain their image of perfection was immense, a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. The boys were expected to be flawless both in and out of the ring, paragons of virtue in a world often devoid of it. And Fritz, still haunted by the loss of Jack Jr., pushed them relentlessly, as if each victory, each feat of strength, could somehow fill the void left by his firstborn. Time and tragedy, it seemed, waited for no one, not even Texas royalty. The Von Erichs were about to enter a period of their lives where the line between their scripted wrestling drama and real-life anguish would blur beyond recognition. In late 1983, David began experiencing periodic stomach sickness. Despite his deteriorating condition, he continued to perform, a testament to both his dedication and the unrelenting pressure to maintain the Von Erich image. Then, on February 10, 1984, news broke that would shake the wrestling world to its core. David Von Erich, the Yellow Rose of Texas, had been found dead in a Tokyo hotel room. He was just 25 years old. The official cause was listed as acute enteritis, an inflammation of the intestines. But in the murky world of professional wrestling, where truth and fiction often intertwine, rumors began to swirl of drug involvement. These whispers would form the first notes of a dark undercurrent that would continue to haunt the family in the years to come. Kevin, to this day, believes it was a heart attack that claimed his brother. The truth, like so much in the Von Erich saga, may never be fully known. In true wrestling fashion, the Von Erichs turned this personal tragedy into public spectacle. A memorial event, grandly titled the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions, drew over 32,000 fans to Texas Stadium. It was here, in a moment of bittersweet triumph, that Kerry Von Erich defeated the legendary Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. As Kerry raised the belt high, tears streaming down his face, it seemed for a moment that the Von Erichs might transmute their grief into glory. But David's death was not an isolated tragedy. It was merely the opening salvo in a fusillade of misfortune that would decimate the Von Erich family over the next decade. Mike Von Erich, the fourth son, had never shared his brother's passion for wrestling. His heart belonged to music, but in the wake of David's death, he felt compelled to step into the ring, to fill the void left by his fallen brother. It was a decision that would have fatal consequences. In the summer of 1985, during a match in Israel, Mike severely dislocated his shoulder. The injury required surgery, but what should have been a routine procedure turned into a nightmare. Mike contracted toxic shock syndrome, his temperature soaring to a life-threatening 107 degrees. He suffered major organ failure and lost an alarming 40 pounds in a matter of days. Against all odds, he survived, but those close to him said he was never the same man again. Haunted by the deaths of his brothers and his own inability to carry on the family legacy, Chris spiraled into a deep depression. In September 1991, Fritz and Doris found a suicide note in Chris's room. Despite their frantic search, it was too late. Chris Von Erich had taken his own life. He was only 21, the youngest casualty in the Von Erich family. In the span of less than a decade, Fritz Von Erich had lost 5 of his 6 sons. The wrestling empire he had built on their backs had crumbled. The Von Erich name, once synonymous with wrestling greatness, now carried the weight of unspeakable tragedy. Many fans and observers concluded that the Von Erichs must have been cursed, but Kevin, the sole surviving brother, vehemently rejects this notion. Not only have I lost a brother, I lost all of them. There was talk about there being a curse on the family. It's ridiculous. A curse. What happened was just a terrible thing. But no curse. Kevin Von Erich, the last of the wrestling brothers, has carried the weight of his family's legacy for decades. He too battled suicidal thoughts, but managed to find peace. Today, he and his wife Pam have 4 children and 11 grandchildren. Kevin has dedicated himself to keeping the memory of his brothers alive, while also ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. He represented the entire Von Erich family when they were collectively inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009, and the Von Erich legacy continues. Kevin's sons, Ross and Marshall, have taken up the family mantle, competing as a tag team in various wrestling promotions. They do so with a sense of honor and respect for their family's complex history, but without the crushing pressure that burdened their uncles. The story of the Von Erichs is more than just a wrestling tale. It's a cautionary story about the price of fame, the weight of expectations, and the importance of being true to oneself. It's a reminder that behind the glamour and excitement of the wrestling world, there are real people with real struggles. In the end, perhaps Kevin Von Erich said it best. I used to have 5 brothers. Now I'm not even a brother. It's an emotional reminder of all that was lost in pursuit of wrestling immortality. But Kevin doesn't wallow in self-pity. Instead, he chooses to focus on the future and the lessons learned from his family's tumultuous past. I have a good life, and I'm planning on having a lot more. When people say, "How do you do it?" the answer is pretty simple, really. If you don't have any choice, then it's easy to deal with. What else are you going to do? Just drop dead and sink into the ground like rain? The Von Erich saga serves as a stark reminder that behind every larger-than-life persona, there's a human being facing very real challenges. Their story continues to captivate and caution, a testament to the enduring power of the Von Erich legacy. In the wild world of professional wrestling, few stories are as compelling, as triumphant, or as heartbreaking as that of the Von Erichs. Their tale will forever be etched in the annals of wrestling history, a complex tapestry of glory and despair, of soaring victories and crushing defeats. But perhaps the most important part of the Von Erich story is not how it ended, but how it continues. Through Kevin's survival and the careers of his sons, the Von Erich name lives on. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there is hope for redemption and renewal. As we look back on the Von Erich legacy, we're reminded of the power of family, the allure of fame, and the fragility of life. Their story serves as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration, a reminder to cherish our loved ones, to pursue our passions, but to never lose sight of what truly matters. In the end, the Von Erichs were more than just wrestlers. They were brothers, sons, fathers, and icons. They were human beings who loved, struggled, triumphed, and ultimately reminded us all of our own humanity. Their legacy lives on, not just in wrestling history, but in the hearts of all who have been touched by their story. And so, as the final bell rings on our tale of the Von Erich family, we're left to ponder the true meaning of success, the weight of legacy, and the enduring power of love. In the squared circle of life, it's not about how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back up. The Von Erichs, through triumph and tragedy, showed us what it means to keep fighting until the very end. This has been the story of the Von Erich family, a tale of glory, tragedy, and ultimately hope. May their memory serve as both a warning and an inspiration for generations to come.